You're listening to the Yard of Greatness podcast, episode number 25. Welcome to the Yard of Greatness podcast. My name is June Allen, your sister in service from juneallen.net. On this show, I empower non-white listeners to prioritize their racial wellness and emotional sobriety. The platform is for educational purposes, is based on my experiences, and is shared in good faith. Always consult your doctor, therapist, or licensed mental health professional before applying any of the suggestions given within this platform. The vision is to build a blackalicious life of empowerment so there can be peace. Now on with the show. Greetings family. I hope you are well. June Allen here from juneallen.net. And today I'm going to be giving you 15 reasons why Black self-love is important. Now, for those of you that have already been through my 7 days of revolutionary Black self-love, thank you so much for sending your messages in. They've really made me smile, a lot of them, and it's always really great to hear directly from you. So please keep the messages coming, and I'm really glad that so many of you are finding it really useful. So yeah, no, it's been really great. So if you haven't done the challenge yet, today is going to be a great podcast for you. So yes, today I'm going to be sharing with you 15 reasons why Black self-love is important. Number one is white supremacy is oppressing us 24/7, 365 days a year, and we need to have something to be able to counteract that. Now, you know, our brother Neely Fuller talks about the 9 areas of people activity where white supremacy bleeds into our communities, and that's economics, education, entertainment, labour, law, politics, religion, sex and war. So basically, there is nowhere that Black people can go where we're not going to get oppressed, and that is going to have a huge impact on how we think about ourselves, how we deal with each other. That's why this stuff is so difficult for us, because if we're not doing something to counteract that oppression, then we are going to end up absorbing a lot of it. So this is one of the main reasons why Black self-love is important, because white supremacy is out there aggressive all the time, and we need to be able to love ourselves so that we can counteract it. Number 2, the media is very anti-Black and very aggressive, and it's traumatic, and we need to practice Black self-love in order to maintain our sense of well-being, in order to maintain our sense of self. If the media is always telling us that we're violent, that we're ugly, that we're bad, that, you know, everything about Black is negative, then it stands to reason that we are going to absorb that consciously and unconsciously. So, you know, we need to protect ourselves from the media and set boundaries around how much time we spend in the media in order to protect our mental well-being. Number 3, when you love yourself, you can be a lot more constructive to fight white supremacy. And yeah, it's impossible to be constructive and to think things through if we're in pain, or if we're still, you know, we're struggling under the oppression. You know, I'll share a story with you that I've been diagnosed as being vitamin D deficient. You know, in the UK there's hardly any sun, so it kind of makes sense that that I'm vitamin D deficient. But as a result of that, you know, I can sometimes experience a lot of muscular pain, and sometimes my mood can get very low as well. And sometimes I don't, you know, if I'm having a really busy period and I kind of, you know, my self-care kind of slips off the radar, I can find myself in a very painful, very difficult place, and I have to pull myself up, because I can't serve my community if I'm in pain, or if I'm feeling depressed, or I just can't function, because I'm, you know, physically and emotionally and mentally, that I'm just completely drained. So, you know, I have to practice self-love. I have to take care of myself. I have to keep checking in with my body, keep checking in with my mental well-being. And so, you know, when I feel better, then I'm more constructive. As soon as I realised what was going on, you know, I went straight to the chemist and got myself some really high strength vitamin D tablets, and just kind of upped my general daily vitamin intake and stuff. And you know, the difference is just been so overwhelming. And you know, as soon as I'm feeling better, I'm back on it. You know, I'm back on it. I'm feeling a lot better. I'm feeling like I do have the power to change my circumstances. So think about the areas in your life where you're not loving yourself, and where these, you know, not loving yourself means that you're not able to perform as well as you can do. Just think about that for a minute. Think about the impact when you don't take care of yourself. What impact is that having on the way that you raise your children, the way that you are in relationships? Don't underestimate the power of self-love and self-parenting. Okay, so number 4 is, when we teach our children how to take care of themselves. When we take care of ourselves, children don't learn what we say, they learn what we do. You know, they live what they learn. So if we're not very good at taking care of ourselves as parents, then your children are going to see that and they're going to do the same thing. This is one of the most powerful things that I found about being a parent, is that, you know, my daughter is going to reflect back to me what's going on for me a lot of the time. And sometimes I think it's so painful, and sometimes it's annoying, because I don't want always to have that mirror looking back at me going, hello, this is what you're not doing. But it's a gift. She's a gift, because she's constantly reminding me where I'm out of alignment. She's constantly reminding me where I need to be doing the work, and she keeps me on my toes. You know, your children are there to teach you what you need to do, where you need to go, what you need to learn. And if you're open and willing to doing this work, then it's important that you take the lessons from wherever your higher power is sending them. Number 5, if you're loving on your blackalicious self, then it's going to be so much easier to build relationships and love other black people in our community. I don't know how many times I see on social media about, you know, black people always saying, you know, where's the black unity? Black people don't love each other. Black people don't trust each other. And quite often it's because we're not taking care of ourselves. We don't love ourselves. We have to relearn how to love ourselves. And, you know, that takes courage. Sometimes it can be hard for us to love ourselves, especially if we've been raised in homes where there is neglect or abuse. It's hard for us to just kind of stand up one day and then start loving ourselves and taking care of ourselves. But if we want to improve the relationships with our community, and improve the relationships with our children, with our partners, our wives, our husbands, then it really does have to start with taking care of yourself, with loving yourself. Number 6, we need to create a legacy of generational health. Generational health. That's HEALTH. It's all, you know, I hear a lot of people in the community talking about we need to build a legacy, we need to, you know, be economically empowered and all of this kind of stuff. And that is a huge part of the conversation around destroying white supremacy. But the massive elephant in the room, which a lot of people find difficult, and it is difficult, but it's an important part of the puzzle that we cannot ignore if we want our legacy to be sustainable. We've got to take control of our health. We've got to be willing to do the emotional work. We've got to be willing to, to learn to do all the emotional literacy work, because that is the reason why white supremacy has us in the place that we are at the moment. It's taken centuries of breaking us down at a psychological level. And so the only way that we're going to rebuild that is that we have to dismantle that internal stuff. And that part of that conversation is about black self-love. In the 7-day Black Self-Love Challenge, I talk about, in the first audio, I help people define exactly what is Black self-love. And a lot of people do talk about, the external part of it. And, it's important for us to really stay focused on Black self-love being the internal work that we're doing on ourselves. It's not just about wearing a dashiki or wearing cornrows or wearing an afro and all of that kind of stuff. It's not just about that. It's about the internal stuff. What do we really feel about our blackness? Are we able to express our Black experience without feeling shame? Are we able to talk to other people about our blackness unapologetically? These are all internal ways that we can express our Black self-love and be able to do a gut check as to where we are on that scale. And this is where I come to number 7. Number 7, this next reason why Black self-love is important is because, we begin to live a life that's authentic. We begin to live in our truth. That's what it means to live in your truth. It is being unapologetic about being Black. It's not being afraid to be able to say what's going on for you. Obviously, that doesn't mean that you're going to put yourself at risk. Obviously, there's going to be, there might be people that, there might be people in your current workplace that are racist, and it's important to have boundaries. But having boundaries around your blackness is not the same as sitting in the shame of being Black. That can, putting boundaries in your workplace and not having certain conversations with certain people about your Black, your values and stuff like that. It might not be safe. It might not be emotionally safe. So it's important that, we also have boundaries when we talk about this stuff. But this is what it means to live authentically and living in your truth. It means that you know who you are. You don't have to explain it to anybody else. But in the appropriate situations, you're able to express and share and, dance in your blackness. Dance in your Blackalicious truth. Number 8 is having Black self-love is going to improve how we show up in our business. If you're self-employed, you're going to be able to stand up as a Black person and share that part of yourself with your audience. I can't tell you how many, one of the reasons that the last straw for me in setting up my business is that I got so tired of hearing other Black businesses telling Black people not to talk about racism. Don't talk about your Black pain, don't talk about politics and don't talk about racism. And it was really, really frustrating, because if white people are telling us not to talk about it and Black people are telling us not to talk about it, how on earth are we going to heal from this? How on earth are we going to heal from this? This is another reason why this internal work is so important. I recently read a book on the psychology of selling by Brian Tracy, and I had a huge aha moment about Black people, because in one of the chapters he talks about poor self-image, and he's saying how people that have got a really poor self-image are going to find it difficult to sell, are going to find it difficult to connect with their audience. And I was like, oh my gosh, this makes complete sense, because I see, so many other Black businesses that struggle to connect with their audience. They've got these products and they put the product out there, but either they're afraid to serve their community and sell the product to the community, because they don't have a good self-image. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of shame that comes up around it, because you have to be visible. If you're going to be out there running a business and selling your services and selling your products, you've got to be visible. And this is going to, the whole root of racism is triggered in like a shame-based relationship with the world. If you've got a shame-based relationship with the world, which Black people have, it's going to be difficult for us to be visible, because there's going to be a lot of fear and pain involved in being visible. And I say this stuff because I speak from experience around this stuff. This is something that I have to work through on a daily basis. I have to remember that, you know, I have absorbed a lot of racism over the years, and a lot of stuff that, you know, I see all the time, and I have to remind myself that, and I have to manage that internal relationship, that my internal white supremacist, if you want to call it that, I've got an internal white supremacist that keeps telling me that, you know, I'm black and my business is not going to be successful, black people are not going to support you, you know, if you keep talking about all this black stuff, you know, white people are going to shut you down, and all of this kind of stuff. And when I first, you know, set the business up, that voice was so loud. That voice was so loud. And it was painful. It was painful to actually keep doing what I'm doing and silence that voice. But as time goes on and I keep sharing and keep speaking up and keep doing the work to silence that voice, it becomes easier for me to speak up. It becomes easier for me to stand in my truth. Number 9 is that, you know, the more black self-love that we have, the more confidence that we're gonna have in ourselves. Because what tends to happen when we don't love ourselves is that we're disconnected from our humanity, and that in of itself psychologically is going to create a lot of pain, trying to disconnect from yourself. And again, like I was saying previously, you know, racism is about shaming black people into silence, shaming black people into disconnecting from who they are as people, and so that we allow ourselves to be controlled by white supremacy. And so, you know, that pain of trying to disconnect from who we are is going to create disharmony with ourselves. It's going to create disharmony with our community. And we're not going to be confident, because confidence is about being whole. Confidence is about accepting all aspects of ourselves. And you know, as black people, that is a huge part of our identity. And so the more you accept yourself, the more you do the work in loving yourself, loving your blackness, you're going to have more confidence. And therefore, you're going to be able to show up in the world from a more authentic place. Number 10. Other people's opinions won't matter when you're grounded in who you are. The more of this work that I've done on myself, the less I care about what white people think. You know, when I first started doing this work, it was kind of like, oh, are white people going to be upset with me? Is so-and-so still going to want to be my friend? And, you know, I realised that I was denying who I was. I was trying to assimilate. I was trying to, you know, disconnect from my blackness so that I could still maintain these friendships. And the more I did this work, I realised that it became more and more difficult. It became more and more painful for me to maintain authentic white friendships, because, you know, white people get triggered by this stuff. They get triggered by it because they're so used to being in a dominant position. They're not used to black people speaking up, and, you know, they will try to silence you. And actually, that's it. That dynamic just became more and more painful for me to be in. And I just thought, I can't be in these friendships, these so-called friendships, because I can't be myself. I can't be myself. So, you know, the boundaries that I have around white people now, I mean, obviously, you know, I'm polite, I'm not rude to white people, but, you know, there are certain boundaries that I have around how close I can get to white people, and what sort of discussions I have with them, because, you know, I have to also accept that, you know, they're not doing this work and they're not going to understand. They're not going to understand what I'm talking about. They're not going to understand how I feel. You know, I've always said that, you know, white supremacy is an addiction to power. And, you know, white people are socialized to feel entitled. And that's probably going to piss a few people off, but that is the truth. White people are socialized to feel entitled, just like black people are socialized to feel inferior. And so, you know, I wouldn't go to, you know, go and talk to an alcoholic and try and convince an alcoholic to stop drinking, for the same reasons that, you know, I'm not going to engage in any in-depth conversations with white people, because they are, a lot of them are, you know, they practice white supremacy knowingly and unknowingly, because that is the honest truth about the way that white people have been socialized. So it's important for me personally, to set certain boundaries around conversations that I have with white people now, because what I see always happens is that when black people start speaking up about their experience, about their pain or whatever, there's always some white person that starts getting triggered by it, and they start making it about them, and then the white tears come out, and they start talking about, you know, their own feelings and all of this stuff, trying to silence the black person. It becomes all about the white person's fragility, and you know, it's emotionally quite abusive, and so I won't put myself in those situations anymore. I will not do it, because it's not good for me emotionally, and it's hard enough as it is. It's hard enough as it is for us as black people to be able to deal with this stuff. It's not my responsibility to deal with white people's feelings around this stuff. They need to go and deal with that on their own self. That's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to deal with my own black well-being. And so, you know, the more I've set boundaries around that stuff, the more grounded I feel, the less, you know, their opinions don't matter. And that's not me being disrespectful to them. It's just that I'm taking responsibility for the things that I'm in control of. I cannot control how white people feel about this stuff. It's not my responsibility. So I'm leaving their stuff with them, and I'm dealing with what I'm responsible for. Number 11, black self-love is going to allow you to grow up more emotionally. And you're just going to become more emotionally mature, because the deeper you go with the black self-love, the more willing you are to dig deeper around this stuff and to really start to transform the pain, to let go of the old hurts, to be able to transform the negative thinking and really understand at a psychological level how racism has impacted you, and being willing to do the work to transform it. You're going to get more emotionally mature. And so, you know, life then becomes, you feel more empowered. You're going to feel more empowered to change the other things in your life. You're going to feel more empowered to be a better parent. You're going to feel more empowered to be a better person, a better wife, a better husband. These things are going to just really help. Yeah, they're just going to really encourage you to step up and do what you need to do to take care of yourself and those you love. Number 12 is that, you know, many of us as black people were raised in homes where we didn't feel loved. You know, a lot of us were raised in homes where there was violence, there was abuse, there was neglect. You know, racism has been internalized within our families. We know that, you know, racism, white supremacy has been attacking the black family, you know, it's a huge part of their strategy to control us. And so, you know, that internalized racism is quite often acted out through beatings, through whatever it is, you know, and that, you know, there's going to be loads of people listening to this that, you know, that relate to being hit as children and stuff like that in the most vicious ways. And, you know, this is another reason why we need to love ourselves, because we have to learn, in order to change that pathology, we've got to learn how to self-nurture. We've got to learn how to self-parent. We've got to give ourselves permission to feel and process the hurt and the pain that we grew up around, in order for us to break those pathologies. This is something that I had to do with my own family. You know, I understand that there are layers to this. I understand that ultimately my ancestors came from slave plantations in Jamaica, and that all of that trauma is just been passed down the generations. My great grandmother was the daughter of a slave, and you know, that pain and that trauma has just been passed down. And so, you know, there's a history in my family of neglect, of abuse, of you know, of violence, chronic codependency, chronic shame. All of these things have been passed down the generations. And so, you know, in order for me not to pass that stuff on to my daughter, I had to make the choice to do the internal work, to love myself, to learn how to reparent, to find another way to connect with my community, to connect with you. And the only reason that I'm able to do that with you on this podcast is because I processed a lot of the stuff that was holding me back. I processed a lot of the pain that was keeping me from being able to love myself and love other people. Number 13 is that it becomes so much easier to set boundaries around, dysfunction when you love yourself, when you start practicing black self-respect. Boundaries are always hard to set in the beginning. Actually, just before I go any further, a boundary is what works for you and what doesn't work for you. It's that simple. A boundary is something that you set with yourself. It can be something that you set with another person. It can be around, it can be a people, place, or a thing that's going to work for you. So just like I was saying to you before around having conversations with or setting boundaries around white people, making a decision not to have a deep conversation with another white person about racism is setting a boundary, because it's not good for my emotional well-being. So I've made that choice. That's a boundary, and that's because I respect myself. I respect that, and I need to feel safe. I need to feel emotionally safe when I'm going about my business, and I don't want to have to deal with somebody else's dysfunction. The whole part of the black self-love process is really getting to know who you are. I talked previously about the whole concept of us being disconnected from ourselves as part of the white supremacy process, and how it becomes internalized. And when you begin to love yourself, there's a powerful reintegration that happens that can sometimes feel really uncomfortable because it's something that you're not used to. But when you really start to sit with who you are and accept who you are, when you begin to love yourself, then it is going to be a lot easier to set boundaries, because you understand who you are. You know who you are. You know where your vulnerabilities are. You know where your strengths are. You know what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And it's not that it's a process, and those things change and grow as you grow. Being able to set boundaries, healthy boundaries, are what is going to keep you sober. This is what's going to keep you racially sober, when you have the ability to do that. And it takes time and it takes practice, but once you learn how to do it, it really is the most empowering thing on the planet. Number 14 is that we are individually responsible for producing justice and ending white supremacy. It has to begin with us taking individual responsibility before it can filter out as a collective. And when we love ourselves, when we take responsibility for ourselves, when we honor our own humanity, this is how we are taking individual responsibility. We're not going to work as a collective if we're broken individually. And I talk about this quite a lot, because I hear people getting caught up all the time with the economic empowerment conversation, and you've got to buy black and you've got to do all this stuff. But I think a lot of people, they can get fixated on supporting black businesses and earning money, when people are forgetting that we are broken inside. And it might be that a lot of the reasons why black people don't buy from other black people is because we don't trust other black people. And we don't trust other black people is because we're still carrying pain from what went on in our families that internalized a lot of racism. The pain that a lot of us are still carrying from our families is being filtered out into our ability to not buy from other black businesses. But that can be transformed when we start the process of loving ourselves. If you're not willing to do the work individually, then we haven't got a cat and mouse chance collectively. It's that simple. Point blank period. And number 15, the last reason that black self-love is important is because the revolution does start with self-compassion. And when we are compassionate to ourselves, it's so much easier to be compassionate to others. Sometimes I can find it really difficult to sit on social media and just hear, the savagery that goes on between black people. And I think often that's because, You know, we've absorbed so much aggression and hate from white supremacy, and we've got a lot of us that are carrying around a lot of unheard pain, that stuff gets, you know, it gets kind of discharged onto other people that look like us, because we feel powerless to do anything about it with white supremacy. So we just dump it onto each other. You know, we're aggressive with each other. We don't have any empathy towards each other because we're so triggered. Our blackness has become the trigger that makes us act out and mean to each other. We're afraid to be vulnerable with each other because we're afraid that somebody is going to do something to us. Somebody's going to be vicious with us, because for a lot of us, that is the environment that we grew up in. And that's what we experience at a social level under the system of white supremacy. So we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to share our vulnerabilities. And so, you know, and being compassionate to ourselves requires us to be vulnerable. But it's not about us, you know, putting ourselves at risk of being unsafe. It's about being vulnerable and being compassionate with ourselves in a boundaried way. Finding black spaces that are going to hold us through our healing process. Speaking to people that are going to honor us without judgment and without shame. When you start being more compassionate with yourself, your life is going to be transformed. If there's one thing that I can say that has transformed my, you know, that's transformed my story, it's that one thing. It's being compassionate to myself, because that is something that I just haven't experienced a lot of it in my lifetime. And when I'm compassionate with myself, you know, I give myself permission to make mistakes. And when I give myself permission to make mistakes, I also give myself permission to learn the lessons and to embrace the lessons. When you start practicing more self-compassion, then you stop dumping your stuff on other people, and you can start taking responsibility for yourself. You can stop judging other people for their mistakes, so-called mistakes, and start understanding that there's always a story behind the story. You can be an example of what it means to practice self-love, to practice black self-respect. Be an example for others to look up to. Your children are watching. If you want the next generation to have a different experience to you, if you've got children and you want your children to have a different experience to you, then you can start with self-compassion. If you want to learn how to practice more self-love, you can go to 7days.juneallen.net. That's 7days.juneallen.net and sign up for the free Black Self-Love course. You're going to love it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It's been a real pleasure. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. Have a blackalicious day, and we'll speak soon. Take care. Bye-bye. Greetings family, it's June. Let's get honest for a minute. Are you secretly struggling with low self-esteem? Is your negative thinking keeping you small? Would you like more confidence to share your black girl magic? I have 7 days of revolutionary black self-love. It's a free audio email course to show you some simple ways to love on your blackness. Go to www.blackselflove7.juneallen.net. Build your blackalicious life. Be empowered.